TechAfrica News Podcast from Africa for Africa. In partnership with Smart Africa. Good evening from Cape Town and welcome to another episode of the TechAfrica News Podcast. Today I have the pleasure to talk to Anthony Mveyange, Director of Programs Synergy at APHRC. APHRC. You see, it's your last name and even the association. But let me give another try. Mveyange.
Mveyange, that's
Perfect,
correct.
right?
That's correct.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So we just finished a very interesting panel at the Digital Africa Summit in South Africa. So we're basically fresh from the stage here in the studio. So can you tell our audience a bit more about APHRC, what you're doing, and what is actually your role?
Excellent. So APHRC stands for African Population and Health Research Center. This is an African-led, African-based organization. It was set over 2 decades ago with headquarters in Nairobi and regional offices in Dakar, Senegal. APHRC basically does 3 things. If you think of a triangle number 1, APHRC conducts research. Triangle number 2, APHRC does policy translation. And triangle number 3, APHRC does capacity strengthening. Now, on research, policy translation, capacity strengthening, we focus on 3 major areas: population, health, and development in Africa. Within research, we do have about 4 major themes that we focus on. The first one is health and well-being, which houses a lot of work around food, nutrition, and food systems, non-communicable diseases, emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases, health strengthening systems, and things to do with climate change as well. So that's housed, and sexual reproductive health. It's a long-term, sexual reproductive health, maternal, children, all the adolescents. So there's a whole team that is doing that. The second theme focuses on human development, on research. Under human development, anything to do with education, young people, studying youth, studying higher education, studying human capital development. That's where it's housed. And all those kind of research is being done there. The third is population dynamics and urbanization. So anything to do with aging, fertility transition, urbanization challenges, and climate, they're housed under the population dynamics and urbanization. And the fourth is our most flagship program called Data Science Program. Data Science and Data Synergy Evaluation. So there we have 2 units that are working closely. Data Science Program focuses on matters AI, big data, machine learning. We have geeks and scientists who are busy doing work there. And then Data Science and Data Synergy and Evaluation, we focus on evaluating interventions across the continent and applying robust methods, scientific methods for evaluating different development interventions. So that's research. Now, if you come to policy translation, we have 3 themes. One, we have corporate visibility, communication. We are making sure our work is visible in different spaces and corporate communication for the organization. But second is what we call synergy, anything to do with science communication. And we have a very unique approach that we call signature issues approach, where we focus on areas that we have done good work over the years. We have solid evidence, multi-year, multi-country, and evidence that is solid, to shape policy discussions. And of course, how do we communicate science? How do we engage in policy? And the third theme within the policy engagement and communication or policy translation arm is advocacy. So we focus also on advocacy, leveraging on lived experiences, the work that we feel is very strong at shaping policies on the continent, and we actually support such kind of interventions. And maybe before I go to the third, it's important also to remember we are operating in over 35 countries in Africa. We have multiple projects in these areas, in these almost across the continent. And then now coming to the third pillar or the third triangle is capacity strengthening. We believe that we need to create what we call research and development self-sufficiency for Africa. And this speaks to Agenda 2063. Where we need to build Africans who are capable to do robust research. At APHRC, for example, if you look at the staff composition, over 90, we have 92 PhD scientists We have almost 160 master's level and another 120 bachelor's level. We have about 326 employees. It's a big organization. So under capacity strengthening, we also have 3 arms. One, we have individual capacity strengthening, where we build capacity of African scholars and scientists. And for example, under individual capacity strengthening, we do have a very robust program which we have partners in South Africa. It's called CATA, Consortium for Advanced Research Training in Africa, which we have trained over 260 PhD in the last 12 years. And our partner locally is Wits University. And then we have institutional capacity strength. We don't only do individual capacity strengthening, we also build capacity of institutions. So here we build capacity of universities to be able to do research, to build proper infrastructures and whatnot. And then the third unit within the capacity strengthening is what we call ecosystem. So here we have designed a lot of interventions that are affecting regulations, how countries can work together, how can we better the R&D ecosystem on the continent. And we have quite a number of innovations. One of them, which I would encourage viewers to take their phone and try on, it's called Africa Research Connect. You can Google Africa Research Connect and it will tell you African scholars who are available on the continent, what they do, where they are. So we have used AI to leverage, to sort of scrap the website and build a powerful platform where African scholars are now visible, African scientists are now discoverable, which makes it easy for ensuring that Africa's contribution in the research and development agenda globally and within the continent is seen. So APHRC, across all these spectrum, you can actually see we work with different stakeholders. We work with civil societies, we work with continental bodies, we work with regional bodies, SADC, East African Community, ECOWAS, Pan-African Parliament, AU. So we really try to be a Pan-African entity that speaks to challenges that are confronting the continent. And we are very happy to be here during the Africa Digital Summit.
Those are quite a lot of layers what you cover with. So you mentioned at the beginning you're African-led. So you're an African organization.
Yes, we are an African organization. The executive director, her name is Catherine Chobutungi. She is the Ugandan. Below her, there's me, who is Tanzanian. There's director of operations and deputy executive director, who is Kenyan. And then there's a director of research, who is Cameroonian.
So the Pan-African footprint.
Proper Pan-African. And we do have in our staff, we have staff from at least, I think, 15 countries on the continent who are all based either in Dakar, Senegal, or in Nairobi, Kenya.
So we could say that research is one of your, let's say, strongest pillars, or it's basically where everything starts, because without research, you cannot really draw any proper conclusion.
Yeah, it's true. Evidence, what we call our mantra at APHRC is what we call EIDM. So evidence-informed decision-making. And we do what we call end-to-end engagement. First, the problems that we try to solve and contribute towards solutions to address some of these problems, we call what we do bottom-up approach. We work with policymakers, we work with governments to understand what are the issues in the ecosystem, what are the challenges. So evidence-informed decision-making requires consultation, defining problems in the way it is contextualized within the society. And then we apply science, we apply rigorous scientific approaches to actually address some of these challenges. And once we get that evidence, we use policy translation. Actually, there's evidence that has come out recently that shows that globally, only 14% of the evidence that is generated is consumed. 86% is not. It doesn't find its way to where it matters the most. Now, even for that 15% that is actually consumed, it takes 17 years to translate to policy. At APHRC, our goal is to cut down from 17 years to 4 years, so that evidence is not only robust, but it's quickly translated into policies that are needed to shape and influence things on the ground. So our evidence-informed decision-making is really meant to speak to that. We don't just jump to doing evidence that is not robust. It has to be scientifically driven, scientifically done, scientifically rigorous. And then, of course, then we channel it to the right platforms where it can actually be translated, repackaged for policymakers to understand, for civil society to understand, for NGOs, for communities, because we also work with communities in different countries to be able to understand. So we tailor-make evidence based on who is the audience.
So basically on facts.
on facts. It's strictly driven on evidence. We don't publish things we don't push for things that are not evidence driven. No, we don't.
I just can assume that sometimes governments, or especially the public sector, doesn't like to hear facts or reality. So how does it translate on one side what you, let's say, gather, what you find as kind of evidence? I assume it cannot always be successful in terms of policy
there's
translation.
always pushback. We do have contentious issues. We do have contentious projects. For example, I can give you an example. We have a project called SIPSI, Challenging Politics of Social Exclusion, which focuses on minority. And minorities, young people, minorities, women, minorities, LGBTQ, we do have a project that is funded by CEDA. And the idea is to try to understand their sexual and reproductive rights, And most of the time we do face backlashes and pushback. But we are not pushing for any particular agenda.
Yeah.
Ours is to say, here is the evidence.
Yeah.
For those who are pushing for particular laws and regulations, at least based on evidence.
Yeah.
You understand? So we are non-partisan. We are not affiliated with anyone. We are only affiliated with evidence.
So you're really independent.
We are very independent. We do things independently, but we follow science because science and evidence doesn't lie. We make sure our evidence is rigorous. We make sure that it's thoroughly done, and we bring out the evidence in a balanced way. We don't pick sides. We say, here is the evidence, here is what it shows. Recently, we had a very powerful study in Kenya on abortion for people in marriage. And the uptake, in fact, the evidence, if I remember correctly, the findings of that study, that abortion is higher in people in marriage in Kenya. It drew a lot of discussion. It's just a few months ago. You can Google and you'll find out. And the idea there is to inform public decision making. We are not going to pick sides. We are going to say, this is what evidence says. What does it mean? And this is some work that we did with the Kenyan government Minister of Health. And it attracted a lot of attention in the media, it attracted in the society. But for us, that's an opportunity. It shows our work is well done. When you draw attention in discussions, that means we are able to draw attention where it matters the most, and communities and people in the society is able to engage. Then we have succeeded as a research organization, research to policy organization.
So your activities are government-driven or private sector-driven?
So we are donor-funded. We are donor-funded. So it's not government-driven in the sense that we try to solve problems that speak to challenges on the continent, right? And these challenges can affect governments, and most of the time, health issues are related to government.
But the government is not your driving stakeholder.
No, it's not. We work with government, we work with civil societies, we work with communities. We have a diverse list of an array of stakeholders that we work with. So it's not only the government, although the government is a key player because if our evidence points to changing of policies and legislations, we work with government. This year, for example, in Kenya, we supported development of policy on sanitation management. And I went to the parliament to present with partners, and eventually the parliament ratified. It's now a policy that we supported from scratch. So you see, and now we are working, for example, now with the recent engagement we've done with the Pan-African Parliament, we are currently developing model law on AI for Africa. We are developing model law on cybersecurity for Africa. We are reviewing the Malabo Convention, courtesy of Pan-African Parliament. The idea is, again, to shape policies on the continent in different areas that we work in. And there are quite a list of so many other areas that we have intervened. We have another very big flagship program. It's called Countdown 2030, which is funded by Gates Foundation and other players. Countdown 2030 is essentially building capacity of African governments, Ministry of Health, public institutions, public health institutions, on how do you generate evidence that speaks to SDGs 2030. Where are the countries? We are working in over 30 countries on matters to do with sexual, reproductive health for women, for young adolescents, matters of health. Where are they? You understand? Or SRHR issues. And the idea there, neonatal and maternal mortality. We are tracking, we are helping countries. So we are training people who are policymakers within these ministries in over 30 countries, in 34 countries, if I remember correctly. 34 countries. We work with them directly. We use data from the governments. We build capacity to synthesize those data, come up with policy briefs that go directly to informing and shaping policies across this continent. So these are some of the very powerful innovations and interventions that we are doing. We have many. If I start listing here, the entire podcast will be about our projects.
Very interesting. So, what would you say are still the biggest obstacles in your work?
Many. For now, and let me maybe start from currently. Currently, we have seen Trump happened. And I'll use Trump happened quote in quote. Trump happened, and we have seen research ecosystem undergoing systemic changes in the sense that funding has been disrupted. And as we speak, next week, we have a huge conference in Nairobi where the theme is decolonizing global health in the age of digital transformation. And one of the conversation is around how do we finance science? Financing science, financing evidence that can speak to challenges that the continent is speaking with. What we have seen, by and large, research is heavily donor-driven, okay? And now with Trump happening and shifting priorities in terms of funding and skepticism around research, what kind of research needs to be done, all those kind of things, they affect how science is supposed to be done. And I think that's one of the fundamental challenge of our time.
So he affects your donors, or
it affects the available resources to conduct robust research. Because, for example, there are some areas Trump and his team and his leadership and his administration are not interested in, which are very important for research. So if we are to do research in terms of putting forward or rather supporting knowledge frontier on those areas, you find that this one remove, they don't fund. And we need to fund science to be able to understand what is going on for the sake of knowledge frontier, but also for the sake of solving some of the fundamental problems that the humanity is facing, right? So that's number one. Funding has always been a challenge in many ways. And of course, now discussions are around how can we localize some of these efforts? How do we build urgency within the African continent and ecosystem? How do you bring philanthropies, African philanthropies, to support what is the role of government in supporting R&D? We know, except for South Africa, most of African countries' R&D is barely 1% of GDP.
True.
Which is unfortunate. And maybe you could say that's African leadership to blame. But we are still way far behind from where the world is in terms of investing in R&D. Israel is leading with approximately 6% of its GDP going into R&D. And that's why you see small countries being very innovative. Africa needs to do the same. But the second challenge that I would say is uptake of evidence. The evidence-informed decision-making that I told you, Africans don't have culture to rely on evidence, especially for policy making. One, because evidence takes time, and sometimes policymakers are confronted with needs that require quick, results, which science sometimes is hard because you need to be tested and over. So there's a stress there. There's a friction between quick wins, rapid feedback for policy, but then doing science in the right way. So that's a challenge. It's a challenge, it's a tension. It's a natural tension between research and policy all the time. Policymakers are confronted with decisions whereas scientists are more and researchers are more keen on doing things the right way to make sure that we are not saying the wrong things out there. So there's a natural tension there. What is also, I would say, a challenge within the ecosystem capacity. Capacity to build, capacity. And that's why you see at APHRC, our core mandate tries to address those challenges. We don't have enough capacity, let alone the culture of believing in evidence. We don't have enough capacity that actually can understand, make sense of the evidence and use it to inform decisions. So building the right capacity to not only do the research and generate that evidence, but to consume that research and make sense out of it is also very critical. And that's why you see our role really cuts across this. On the research side, we do make sure that we generate robust evidence and capacity. We build the right capacity that is needed, which is missing on the continent, in ensuring that we have the right African scholars and scientists who are grounded, trained on African science, and be able to contribute not only within the African continent, but and beyond, in terms of solutions, in terms of showcasing what Africa is capable of.
In your experience, and at least from my side, what I can say, if I look back the last 10 years, you see a lot of talk. Most of the issues remain the same. Of course, we solve some of them. We're getting better, especially if you look at, let's say, bridging the digital divide. We have more connectivity. Of course, we have the usage gap. But you come from a background where you actually bring the evidence. So how can we turn evidence into real action and stop the talking?
Stop the NATO. No action, talk only. It's called NATO. Well, so as I said, there are different players within the evidence value chain. Okay? So there are us who generate the evidence, but there are those who take that evidence and implement. But there's also a thin layer between moving from us to those who can use it. And that's where you see translation is very critical. That's the first very important element. Because those who can use evidence, they'll only use it to the extent they're able to understand it. If they don't understand it, forget it, however good that evidence is. That's number one.
So it's also kind of a marketing. You have to market what you find.
Exactly. You have to market, but not market, it's more of advocacy. Advocacy is around creating awareness, not lobbying, creating awareness that there's this good work, this is what has done. And sometimes it requires demonstrating, because seeing is believing. Policymakers in Africa are confronted with so many players. At APHRC, we are setting up what we call Evidence Alliance. And Evidence Alliance essentially is a platform where it brings, for example, you're working on digital divide, on AI. We bring all players on AI in one platform, and we churn out evidence that we can channel to the government as one united front. Because the risk is otherwise you will go as AI to the Minister of Technology, I will go as AI, Josh will go as AI, Anja will go as AI. Everyone is spamming these policymakers with evidence on AI, and it reaches a point this policymaker is conflicted. And then to be like, okay, I know Akim, I think I trust Akim more than Anthony. And that's not how it should be. How do we churn out this evidence, consolidate, pass? Because at the end of the day, we want to shape policies. If the conclusions are the same or if they're conflict, can we consolidate these and pass them somewhere?
It's more like a holistic overview.
Exactly. Now, so for that change to happen, there has to be first an appreciation of that evidence. So we need to create awareness to policymakers that evidence is important for your decision and change that culture and mindset. Very important, because otherwise they're used to ad hoc. I've seen countries and I've worked with countries and advising them. You see just those technical people coming up with solutions that are not grounded on evidence. So first, to change the mindset if we are to see that impact happening. Okay. Second, create avenues such that platforms where such evidence can be accessed easily. But what is important also is that evidence to use local data. Governments in Africa appreciate when you use their data. Most of the time I've seen government pushing back on some of the evidence because it's not grounded on their data. They will tend to challenge and raise questions like, what's the credibility of this data? Where did you get this data from? They can push back. So can we co-create? Can we bring them be part of the conversation from the design of the study, design of the research, such that by the time the findings are coming out, there's nothing that they've not seen, they've not heard. They've approved the process all the way through and through. And that will guarantee their uptake and execution. So that's government. But when you think of the last mile effect, you think of NGOs, local communities, which we call implementation research. These are people who are actually executing. They cannot read a technical scientific paper. They won't have the capacity, and if they do, they don't have the time. They're dealing with communities.
I see.
So what you need is to unpack that evidence for them to be able to chew and make sense of for execution. So that's another area. So identifying who are the players, because us as research and to policy institution, we can't go to the ground. Our mandate doesn't allow us to go and deal with communities and start dishing out 1, 2, 3. We can't do that. But if you think of end-to-end value chain, can we identify players along the ecosystem, along the value chain? Say, okay, if APHRC stops here, who's next? Can we have this in our continuum, in our value chain, to take it up? So these people are stakeholders.
So kind to deliver the proof of concept?
Exactly. So you bring all of these together to be able to own the work. So by the time you know my mandate stops here, someone else picks it up. Someone else picks. But they need to be involved from the word go. So the challenge that we see is that sometimes we tend to do things in silos. And for obvious reasons, we sit in the ivory tower, we have the brains, we are the scientists, and we say, okay, I published this paper, it's a good paper, but no one reads. Impactful work is when that work finds its way to where it matters the most, when it gets all the way to the end. If you have gone to the community, you have conducted a survey to the community, right, with the community. You have gone there, you've collected data. Ethics require that you have to go back and communicate what did you find. Rarely research institutions do that. Rarely scientists and researchers do that. But if you have collected data on these people, you are studying them. Okay, one objective is to publish a paper, which you have done in a good journal. But don't you think you owe them the courtesy of going back and tell them, in this research I've learned 1, 2, 3. And if your community is to be better organized, these are the possible channels to think about. I think ethics requires us to be able to do so. And to answer your question now in terms of end-to-end impact, I call it end-to-end impact, from the design of the study to the end. Right now, I sit in a board at the University of Seattle in the United States. And in that board, we are designing what we call evidence insights. We are designing tools that would help researchers to better understand what are the needs of policymakers and end users of their evidence. So we are doing backward induction. We are starting from policymakers, coming back. But what are the needs of policymakers? What are the needs of different stakeholders? And then we are going backward to design tools that can help scientists and researchers to think about them beforehand when you're designing your research. That way you are able to automatically impact where you expect your research to go. So it's really a process. But as I said earlier, there are always tensions. Researchers have different needs. Policymakers have different needs. Civil society. So how do we create sort of convergence between these players within the ecosystem is very critical. And at APHRC, my docket exactly does that. It's called Synergy. So we make sure that we are able to connect with all the key players within the ecosystem and be able to help not only generate evidence, pass that evidence where it matters the most, and get to hear feedback and engagement that can be meaningful in shaping policy discussions.
But the evidence you create or you find not automatically gives the single policy recommendation, right? So how do you translate it into? Is it always a single policy recommendation? Because sometimes I guess evidence, if you show me a report, I probably perceive it completely different than you. So how can you shape that?
Good. That's how I see it called science communication. Because that's very important. You can do a very good study. For example, the report that we've been discussing today, Africa Digital Health, that we did in Zambia, for example. It has pathways to several recommendations. What we do under science communication is to unpack. One way, we do a policy brief, for example. A policy brief that synthesizes, it removes all the technical jargons, brings it home. We call it bring it home. So that if a common citizen is reading, will be able to understand. Like a newspaper. When someone reads, will make sense of it. But that's one way to unpack.
Easy to digest.
Easy to digest, and someone can easily relate with it. And sometimes using examples, sometimes use pictorial. These days we create even videos. We animate, with using virtual learning. At APHRC we have a virtual learning academy, which uses AI. With AI in action now, you can animate to make it easy. You can even put it in a language that can be understood, because not everyone can read scientific language. Not everyone can read scientific English, which is difficult. But AI can translate some of those things, put it in Zulu, put it in Tswana. Voila, people will understand. So we are leveraging on all these different ways of communicating, of visualizing, to help those who would consume evidence to make sense of. Yes.
AI is a big buzzword. I mean, the whole industry. Even if you would ask now 10 people on the street, 5 would say ChatGPT, 3 would say Gemini, and the other 2 would say Grok. So how can AI really help to accelerate digital transformation in Africa? And how can we use it in a good way, not in a way where we really, let's say, affect lives more negatively?
Okay, so first, with any innovation, when any technical change or technological innovations comes disruptions. It's expected. and an economic historian called Michael Schumpeter. There's a Schumpeterian theory. He coined the word creative destruction. Creative destruction essentially says when a new technology comes, in the short run, there will be destruction in the sense that it will distract jobs. There are people who would be left unemployed, but not for the long term. In the medium term to the long term, these people will upskill, and that's where there's role of government to intervene to upskill these people, and then they'll be absorbed back to the labor market, and that's creative destruction. When internet came, people were worried. What are we gonna do? We started seeing internet cafe here and there, and boom! Before you know it, become normal. AI is here to stay. That's a fact. And I think the sooner people appreciate that, the better we can focus on solutions and how we can leverage AI to really take advantage of digital transformation on the continent. So that's very important. But for Africa, as I said, data is very important. Data is important. But we need to speak to each other. We are fragmented. From data collection, from data analysis to synthesis, and even reporting these data. How do we share them? If anything, what we are seeing, an alarming trend in Africa now, is government instituting or putting in place laws that are prohibitive in data sharing. Data governance issues, data protection issues. We are seeing many countries, regimes imposing those. For obvious reasons, to protect the locals, because for far many years, the locals have been taken advantage of, what we call in research, helicopter research, where researchers come, collect data, and then they disappear. The locals, they get nothing. But we're also seeing patterns towards these laws created for sinister reasons, for other, things that they are not said, but we are observing. Now, data is critical in ensuring that AI as a black box is functioning with something, and data that speak to African challenges. The fear right now is AI are driven by narratives that are not African-centric, which is a genuine fear. But we can't sit aside and keep complaining and whining. We have to get in the game and make sure that those black boxes now are fed data that speaks to the Africans' need. Very important. Second, languages. Most of this AI, the DeepSeek is Chinese. It has one language. Probably Indians have designed their own. Americans, they have their own. One language, English. Africa has over 2,000 languages. But is it necessarily a bad thing? I don't think so. With AI now, we are able to curate and bring the top 5 languages in Africa. Swahili, Zulu, Amharic, Hausa, Fulani. These are top languages on the continent that can unify our people. Swahili now is spoken in multiple countries in East and Southern Africa. It is becoming a language of instruction in schools. So it can be, and it's an AU language, official AU language. It can be used as a springboard to start and see what other language we can integrate. So language is very critical because first it will allow Africa to better understand and innovate authentically based on your own or our own languages. Very important. And since AI has that massive penetration power, we can leverage on that. And then infrastructure. Infrastructure is important. Who will finance infrastructure? Now, if we want government to control everything, first, technology evolves very fast. It can become
faster than policy.
Very fast. Now, our countries are grappling with so many other things. There's debt, there's social services, there's imports, there's I don't know what, with meager resources that they have. Now, should you focus those meager resources to invest in high-risk infrastructure like on AI and data? I don't think so. But what can you do instead? Create an enabling environment that would allow private sector, local private sector to thrive, to be able to have the agility to invest and adapt to new technologies to foster the ecosystem within the continent. That would be the best way to go, I think. Now, where does this money come from? We have a youth bulge. We have young people. We have seen in China, Alibaba subsidizes young Chinese. The government makes intentional efforts to support the local. the state machinery, state enterprises in China. They're the ones who are doing investment with locals. Why Africa can't do the same? We just need to prioritize our needs.
We need a united market.
We are huge. We are approximately 1.5 billion people. Where else are you looking for? If you look at the statistics right now, intra-African trade is barely 18%. Intra-African trade.
Yeah.
Africa trades more with the West than it trades with itself. 15 to 18%. That's the estimate, conservative estimates. But how much Africa trades with the West? Over 30%.
Yeah.
So we export more outside Africa than what we do exporting within ourselves. For obvious reasons. It's costly. The way it is, for example, to move from one country to another, prohibitive immigration laws, it's cheaper to import commodities from China to Kenya than to import from Ethiopia to China that are geographically contiguous. That's our dilemma. And how do we reduce trade cost? How do we leverage AI? Right now, there is what we call digital corridors. AI has so much power and potential.
So, but where's the potential? So how can you translate that potential in something? Because right now, look at South Africa. You have Uber.
Yes.
You have Amazon. Is that what South Africa needs? Okay, can't South Africa develop their own taxi solution? Africa, do we need it? So how can we empower locals to use AI for something what they probably couldn't do before because of ABC or whatever?
Practical question, a good one. First of all, before I answer that, I think it's important for people to appreciate, for your audience to appreciate, and I am a proponent of this narrative. Who defines development? I'm an economist by training. But if there's one thing that I always question myself in my training, is development skyscrapers? Is New York developed? In my standard, I'm sorry to say, New York is not. I find my bush area in Tanzania far more better, healthier than New York. But because we prescribe development with a certain mindset, using a mirror, somebody else's mirror, and we just follow blindly. In South Africa, I sit in a program called APHRC, the African Program for Rethinking Development Economics. I'm a development economist. And one of the things that we've been trying over there is how do we redefine development for the continent? Now, back to your question. How can we leverage AI to empower our people? How do we do that? First of all, what is the need? We need to understand what the need of our people. In this case, for example, our young people. We have seen they don't have to be perfect. Now, if you want an iPad, a perfect iPad, well and good. Then you have to wait until it comes from America or from China, I don't know where. But we can tailor-make local solutions that do not need to be perfect. Our young people, we have done research in 7 countries a few years ago. Young people are not asking for money necessarily. They're asking for mentorship. They're asking for adults to believe in them. I went to Nigeria, I went to Ghana, I went to Rwanda. In 7 countries, I've been talking to young people. And if there's one thing they say, which is a common trend, is mentorship. They have ideas. They want to see Akim holding their hand, show them the ropes. Then after that, they're off. If it's money, they will figure it out. If you think of priorities, mentorship and then finances. But first is mentorship. Across the continent, young people cry out for mentorship. So do we create an environment where we can mentor our people? Do we have such structures? The answer is not necessarily. And for those places that we do very minimal efforts. We need more. So to empower our people to believe in who they are, very important. Because I can give you money, Akim. And if you don't believe in who you are, you just squander it. You'll just misuse it.
Yeah.
Do we believe in who we are as a continent? Go to America. They say, fake it until you make it. It's an American narrative, right? There are people, they have built their philosophy around individualism. They speak boldly as if, and some of them, you listen to them, you're like, which part of the world have you been to? But because they believe in the American dream, If you go to Europe, they have different approach. If you go to Scandinavian countries where I've lived, they also have different. So they have a philosophy around ways of how they work. What is our philosophy? We follow. Chinese, they have their own. Indians, they have their own. It's only Africa. Even religions, they all came from outside.
So we're missing our own identity.
We don't have our own. Let's create our own identity. Africa has resources. The amount of money, the financial leakages that leaves Africa is far more than the ODA that comes to Africa. Those are statistics.
But what role plays technology to unlock that potential?
Now, technology has a role because first, not only empowering our people to innovate, because once you empower people, you give them the technology, they will innovate, like what is happening in China. Everything we buy these days on first, they're all Chinese. They innovate. People are busy. They are developing technology. If you want a glass like this, if you want a glass coated with gold, you will get. You say, right now in China, what do you want? It will be made. So let's use technology to empower people, but create enabling infrastructure and environment for these people to thrive. Now, the challenge we have in Africa, multiplicity of taxes. And I'm not talking of corporations. I'm talking of municipal level taxes, local taxes. I don't know. This young person wants to set up business. They are confronted with a multitude of taxes from Cape Town to Timbuktu. Yeah. How do you expect their businesses to thrive? Corruption, bureaucracy. So you see, the environment itself, even if you have the resources, is not enabling enough. And that doesn't require someone from outside, from IMF, to come and tell us. That is within our remit, it's within our mandate. We just need to decide and say, what's our priority as a country, as a continent? We have the population that is powerful, that is enabling, that is energetic. It needs to be supported. Now, so I said technology can leapfrog innovations. Technology can ease and can bring efficiency gains in many ways. Some of these technological apps and tools that are developed, they can hasten processes, efficiency gains a lot, both within businesses, civil societies, and even within government. Technology can transform how we do things, but not every technology. It has to be context relevant. It has to be grounded on our realities, on our locality, so that it is reflecting our needs.
It should suit the real demand.
Yes, it needs to be demand driven, so to speak. But who can do that for us? Let me ask you, Akim. I'm a Fulbright scholar. Okay? I went to America for my doctorate. And in 2012, 2011, 2010, thereabout, I went to New Orleans in Louisiana. At that time, Katrina hurricane hit New Orleans. And I went as a Fulbright scholar to give back, because I was funded by the American government to give back. And we went to a project that was funded by Brad Pitt to rebuild New Orleans. Brad Pitt funded to rebuild homes in New Orleans because of water. They were submerged, right? And then we sat down with the mayor. We contributed in redesigning the city. Why am I saying that? When Americans face problems, it takes Americans. They don't go around and start making noise and whining. They know this is our problem. We need to fix it. What is happening in Ukraine? All Europeans are rallying behind Ukraine because this is our problem. This is our ally. We need to fix it. After World War II, Germany was nothing. It's American who put in money through the Marshall Plan. Where is Germany today? The problem with Africa, we go and stretch our hands all the time. Biden came. All African leaders went to America. Okay? Chinese Xi came. All African leaders went to Africa. Indians, there have been meetings with Indians. Canadians, Saudi Arabia, we saw African leaders getting on a plane, going everywhere. What the hell are we doing that? Why? It's even dehumanizing. Me as an African, I look at them like I'm seeing my why? The question now is, everyone has a strategy for Africa. There's Canadian strategy that was launched last year. There's an American strategy, what Biden called Inflation Act. It's not an Inflation Act. It's way deeper than that. The Indians, they have the same. The Europeans, they have the same. But does Africa have a strategy to deal with Canadians as a continent? No. Do we have a strategy with Americans as a continent? No. So then who's the problem? Because our partners, our development partners, they have plans for themselves. They know Africa is a source, a market.
Well, a big market.
A
huge
big market.
potential.
They're eyeing, they're strategizing, they're thinking.
They're waiting for the next billion.
That's why they keep strategizing.
Yeah.
But what are we doing?
We need a change of mindset.
Mindset has to change. And Africa needs to wake up to know we have some skin in the game.
Yeah.
Our partners need us. We cannot talk of global economy today without Africa. No. All the innovation, this AI, app, phones, cars, electric, where are the minerals? 2021, 2022, UNCTAD released a report on value chains in Africa. Do you know what that report said? Over 40% of minerals that are needed globally for industrial production, are coming from Africa. The reserves are in Africa. Yeah. Right now, Chinese have Belt and Roads initiatives to go everywhere Africa. The Americans, they've started the Lobito Corridor from Angola all the way to Congo DRC. What are they doing that for? And Trump asked African leaders to meet for that because they want access to resources, access to minerals they need for industrial production. We are the sleeping giant.
But are you optimistic about the sleeping giant?
The continent is changing. The wave we see across the continent, these young people who don't have jobs and they see our leaders squandering resources, this is not the generation that was like my generation that you can say, yes, no. Change is happening in Africa, but we need more. But it starts with the mindset. To know that there's no global economy without Africa. When we think of global economy, Africa is at the center. The market is Africa. Source of raw materials is Africa. If Africa closes its world, some civilization will collapse.
True.
So how do we coexist? And how do we know that we have a position on the global space to leverage our influence? And that's where we miss it. And I think there's an opportunity to do that. How do we unify the continent? A unified force that comes together, negotiates as one, engages as one, speaks as one. Because at the end of the day, our targets, our end goal is the same. What is happening, the global superpowers are dividing and conquering, creating disruption. See the African Continental Free Trade Area. We started with a bang. Where is it now? Before you know, some countries are signing bilateral. What's the point of signing bilateral if you've decided to have one continental platform where you can engage as one and negotiate? Can you go and negotiate? South Africa negotiating with America is just nothing. But if Africa goes to negotiate with America, America will listen because now you're talking to 1.5 billion people. America has 300 million. Chinese almost 1.6 billion. Indians, there's a whiskey called monkey. I was reading its documentary. 300 million Indians consume it. They don't even need to export it out. So when I saw it in Nairobi, I said, there's this whiskey. And I Googled and they have enough market internally. But as I said earlier, intra-African trade is barely 18%. And we are approximately 1.5 billion people. What is wrong with us? So I think we need to do introspection as a continent, as countries. And as I said earlier, and I'm saying it again, our diversity is not a liability. Our diversity is an asset. We need to harness it. We need to harness with clarity on Ubuntu, on the Africa we want. And we should stop talking. We do a lot of NATO. No action, talk only. We now need to act, and we start doing it in small steps because the world is not waiting for us.
I agree.
Another wave of AI will come, and we'll still be there talking and keep whining Africa this, Africa that. Let's get into the action mode. Let's do it. Chinese have done it. 30 years ago, China was nothing. Where is it now? Superpower. What did they do that we cannot learn from them?
They stop talking.
Stop talking, acting. Tiger economies have done it. South Korea 1960 was nothing.
Yeah.
Right now, we go and borrow from South Korea. In 1960, the economic statistics show you African countries were doing far better than South Korea. But today, South Korea now, they have money they're dishing out, and we run to sell and request for loans and whatnot.
We remain optimistic, and I'm sure
should.
when we catch up next year to revisit the conversation, we can draw a conclusion. Thanks for your time, Anthony.
Thank you
It
so
was
much.
very insightful. Thank you.
you.